Any human being who from time to time, depending on what they're trying to do, doesn't feel fear, there is something wrong. Fear is a human emotion. But as an adult, you must be able to understand that that fear doesn't mean it is not possible. A few years ago, I watched an interview where this journalist was asking Samuel Etofis. And the journalist asked him, at what point in your career were you able to step on the field to start a game and you don't feel fear? He said, there was never that point in my life. Every time I step on the field, I feel those butterflies running in my stomach. I feel like I need to go use the bathroom first. I feel that fear. But you know the difference? The difference is that I feel the fear, but I had conditioned my mind to know that immediately I start the game, I have power to control the outcome. So fear no longer has control over me. You only feel fear and it persists when you doubt if you have power to control the outcome. This is a very important piece. And it is important that everybody understands that they have something special. They have something unique. They have something that they can deliver on like nobody else, right? Yeah. And a lot of times, one of the reasons why it's easier to see others win, to cheer others on, is simple. Because you are too intimate to your story, you tend to undermine your story. You tend to believe that your story has no value, that it's not as important as the other person's story. That is one. Number two, as human beings, we tend to focus on what is missing instead of what is growing. Yeah. I want that to sink in. We focus on what is missing instead of what is growing. And in this time and age, the third very important thing, with the advent of social media and all this stuff, a lot of people compare their behind the scenes reality to people's social media highlight reels. I don't know if I make sense. I was watching a random video on Instagram a few weeks ago, and this one really blew me because, boy, it's sad, it's a tough one, but this gentleman and his wife, they were on a date somewhere in a restaurant, and the lady had put up this, 1 minute 30 seconds highlight reel. They brought some nice dessert. The man is feeding her, bought her champagne all that night. Oh, and then she's like, oh, this is the kind of man my love for life. And then there were all these comments underneath, thousands of them. Oh, God, give me a man like that. Oh, boy. Oh, thank God. Oh, man, what a lovely couple. This is an exemplary this and that and this, right? But then, and then about a month later, there was another video showcasing that lady in the emergency room having been battered and beaten up. Okay? And the person who put these two videos was showing, just highlighting the example I'm giving here, about don't take your behind the scenes and compare it with people's highlight reels. A 1 minute 30 seconds video gave thousands of people the opportunity to declare something the greatest that has ever existed, without understanding exactly that what you are in is better. You are having your struggles, but you are finding ways to build it and keep it going. It is important to understand this because as a mental health professional that you are, you even know these numbers more than I do. They are projecting that in the next 2 decades, a big part of most of the mental health challenges will be coming from the perceptions that people get from social media about why their life is lacking something. Hey guys, in addition to all the valuable information I bring to you every week on my videos and my short videos on different platforms, especially here on YouTube, I also have a community of over 2,000 like-minded, serious and driven people who, like you, are receiving exclusively this time a newsletter once a week. And this information in the newsletter is unique and it only goes to those people who are part of the newsletter community. So if you are interested in getting this once a week update, which includes different tips, different ideas on how to build yourself, how to generate wealth, how to make money, how to build a legacy, go ahead and click down in the link in the description and you'll be able to join our newsletter community. And when you join that community, you would realize exactly how much value that brings to you on a weekly and daily basis. Let's get back to regular programming. By the very nature of the way I was born, by the very nature of my wiring, I'm a very outgoing person. I'm what they call a social butterfly. I love people. That's what gives me energy. I genuinely love human beings. When I'm around people, when I create impact to people, when I feel like I've helped somebody become something better, that gives me a lot of spiritual and emotional reward, right? And so as I started growing older, especially in the career, because I started off as a professional MC 22 years ago, so I've been in
Oh,
front of people for years. I've
for
been a
years.
speaker now, a paid speaker for 10 years. So I've been in front of people. And I started noticing that somewhere about my mid 30s, getting to my late 30s, I started noticing that, Gustav, hey, you also have to be able now to start figuring out when some of those messages start coming into your brain because you are not immune to it. No human being is immune to it. The only difference
Okay.
is how you prepare to attack it. So the way I recognize it is number one, when it starts coming to my mind, what I do first is I play some kind of YouTube video of positive messages. That's my own way of doing it. I don't have cable at home for the last 10 years. I disconnected cable.
Distraction.
Distraction, too much negativity, news, and all that stuff, it just drives me crazy. I remember during COVID 19, my kids almost got depressed at home because the TV stations were showing the countdown to how many people have died. Nobody had a countdown to how many people have recovered. So I told myself, listen, and before then, I'd already even disconnected my cable because I just want to stay around things that help build my mind and my
Right.
spirit. And so when I start getting those a sentiment of those thoughts, I start that. There are times even when you've lived long enough with yourself, you understand yourself, you can even see things in the environment and you know where it's leading to. They say if it
Yeah.
quacks like a duck, it walks like a duck, it's most likely a duck, right?
Most likely,
It's just
yeah.
like if you are in a long-term relationship, if you're married, like the people who are married here, you know when your partner does one, two, three, you know where it's leading. So you have a
Right.
choice. You can react the way you always react and it will end where you know it's going to end, or you can cut it off real quick by taking a different action.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in my situation, maybe I just walk out and give her some space. Maybe I go play football or I just go outside for a walk and I'm listening to positive messages to also rewire my mind, right? So when you've lived with yourself, when you've spent some time with yourself, you start understanding those patterns because nothing happens in a vacuum in your body and in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Things will
Yeah.
be repetitive in your mind. That's why they've built a solid conviction. It doesn't convince you by one time. It convinces you
No.
because it's come over and over and over and over and over. So once you understand that pattern, you already know. There are even smells that you know once you smell it, it makes you feel angry. I have
Absolutely.
smells. I have smells that pisses
Absolutely.
me off. So I avoid
I
it.
think,
You see, a lot of people spend time worrying about the thief in the marketplace. The pickpocket that is going to steal from your purse, that is going to steal from your car, that is going to send their hand in your pocket to steal your money. But people don't worry about the thief in your mind. That thief that is trying to steal your destiny, that is trying to distract you from your purpose and your
yes.
legacy. That is what we're talking about today, right?
Yeah.
That is the
Who
thief
was
you
this
have to pay
person? I
attention
think,
to. If there is no enemy within, the enemy without can do no harm. Les Brown highlights that a lot, right? Because this
exactly.
thief in your mind tells you are too old, you are weak, you are not capable, you are too broke, you are not intelligent enough, you are not smart enough, you can't do anything good, your life is useless, you are a bad father, you are a bad mother, you cannot amount to anything. Pay attention to those thieves. Don't worry about the money in your pocket. You can make that overnight. But here is the deal about what you talk about fear, Mercy. Any human being who, from time to time, depending on what they're trying to do, doesn't feel fear, there is something wrong. Fear is a human emotion, and it's even further learned and solidified as we get older. When we are younger and children, for example, when you're a baby, you have no perception of danger, so you don't fear
Oh
anything.
no.
You don't know
You
that the
don't
fire
feel
is hot
anything.
until you touch it, right? But as
Right.
you get older, because your perception of danger has been heightened, your awareness of fear becomes greater. And but as an adult, you must be able to understand that that fear doesn't mean it is not possible. I'll give you a simple example, and I hope this is going to crystallize it for most people. A few years ago, I watched an interview where this journalist was asking Samuel Eto'o. Eto'o was one of the best players in the history of Barcelona. Of course, the number one goal scorer from Africa in the African Nations Cup. This guy is an incredible footballer. Most people know him, right? And the journalist asked him, this was about his 17th year in his career. He was almost at his line, he was past his prime. He was getting closer
Right.
to retiring. And the journalist asked him that, at what point in your career were you able to step on the field to start a game and you don't feel fear? He said, there was never that point in my life. Every time I step on the field, I feel those butterflies running in my stomach. I feel like I need to go use the bathroom first. I feel that fear. But you know the difference? The difference is that I feel the fear, but I had conditioned my mind to know that immediately I start the game, I have power to control the outcome. So fear no longer has control over me. You only feel fear and it persists when you doubt if you have power to control the outcome. So to me, the way I handle it, I feel, of course, even till now, when I'm invited to come and speak in front of 1,000 people or 500 or whatever, those first few minutes you will feel the butterfly, right? But as I am walking from backstage, as they're introducing me, I'm walking up, I start telling myself, Gustav, you are born for this moment. Gustav, this is your time. All your life
And
you've
it's
been
because
preparing for this
breathing.
time. I still do that 17 years after to myself. Right? So everyone must find their own thing that they use to overcome that fear. And these things should be positive things. It shouldn't be negative things like drugs or things like that. No. It should be
Right.
positive things. It should be things that can help you. Right? So that is how I script it in my own spirit. That's how I overcome it because I remind myself that I'm prepared for this moment. Now, the whole concept of legacy to me is a culmination of everything you are. And your legacy, like most people mistakenly think, is not determined at the end of your life. Your legacy crystallizes at the end of your life because that is the point where your legacy can be judged in total till that point. Your legacy is what you live on a daily basis. This is my legacy talking to you on this platform. This is my legacy. It's
Which is
living
kind of
now.
good.
This
Which
is
is
your
nice.
legacy, running the business you are running, doing what you are doing. It is talking to people now. It will talk to them in 10 years. It will talk to them in 50 years, right? So to me, the whole concept of legacy is very powerful because it helps you rewire the way we think about life. So you start from the end and start building backwards. And it helps you really focus on the things that are important. Because when you start asking legacy questions, how do I want to live? How do I want to be remembered at the point when I'm no longer physically here? What do I want people to think about me? When you start asking those questions, you start rebuilding now from the back forward, meaning you start acting now in ways that it will crystallize at that point
At
when you
that
want to.
point.
Because the goal in life is not to live forever, but is to build things and live in a way that it lasts forever. I want somebody to understand me here. The goal of life is not to
Right.
live forever, but is to build things, build a reputation, build a business, build a community, build impact, build a purpose driven life that lasts forever. Most of the inventions we enjoy today, most of the people who invented those things are no longer alive,
They are no longer
but we are
here.
still living that. And let me tell
Right.
you, Mercy, why it is very important to me, the whole concept and conversation around legacy. It is even more relevant for us as immigrants, as Africans mostly, because we are at the point in our lives where if we don't think about legacy, we will never be able to sit on that table. Let me explain to you why. Legacy forces you to ask yourself things that you will do that you will not necessarily enjoy from the benefits. Because the greatest leaders in this world, the greatest societies, inventors, and destiny changers understand that they have to plant trees under whose shade they will never sit. Legacy also forces you to identify the things that matter to you the most. And
Yes.
those things that matter to you the most start defining your self worth. You know why? Because a lot of people today determine their self worth based on the perception that they believe is other people's self worth. A lot of people, you ask them, why did you buy certain things? It's about how it makes them feel, it's about how it makes them think of themselves. That is self worth. But when you start asking legacy questions, those
Right.
legacy questions now help you to chart the map for your life. And now, when you start charting the map for your life, you start realizing the things that need to be in that map, and you start putting out the things that don't need to be. That is why when you see people who have identified their purpose, their goals in life, and what they want to do and how they want to be remembered, a lot of things no longer become important to them. That's the truth of the matter. When it happened to me, once I started identifying that about 10 years ago and consciously sitting down to say, Gustav, how do you want to live your life? What is your purpose? What is it that you want to deliver in this life? What is the legacy you want to leave?
Ooh,
It made it so simple for me because the things that
yeah.
used to be so important to me
You're
no
being
longer
very
became important, Mercy.
emotional and
No, this is real
emotional.
stuff, right?
Being
This is life.
impulsive.
And I just want to leave this with everybody, right? If you read a book a week, you would have read 52 books by the end of the year, and you would have read 500 in 10 years. If you read 2 books a week, you would have read 1,000 in 10 years. And 1,000 books in 10 years is more material than a PhD program. But here's the deal.
Absolutely.
Let me tell you something. The beautiful thing about the time we live is you don't have to read the book physically if you don't want to, right? There are audio books and different ways by which you can do that. An average US worker spends 500 hours every year in their car driving to and back from work. In those 500 hours, instead of listening only to Kofi Olomide and Petit Pays, you could be listening to something that elevates your mind. I love them. I listen to them too. I do. There's nobody, I'm not some guy here who is some, no. But I also give some time to bring my mind up. So that way, when I come on platforms like this, you can find value in what I do, what I say, and you go back home and become better. So that 10, 15 years from today, I will hear somebody doing some great stuff somewhere in the world, and by any chance, I will know that some way, somehow, we have expanded that tentacle. The joy and honor is mine. This was my story today, and you know what? I'm sticking to my story.